Hey, my peeps! I'm so excited. You can't see me very well, but what I wanted to share with you is this from my balcony. Gorgeous, beautiful sunset going down here in Encinitas, California, San Diego, paradise where I live. And I wanted to be able to, Regan and I were going to be jumping on at 6 o'clock, which is in another hour. I know, yes, I'm early. And Regan's in Costa Rica. Obviously, I'm in California right now. We always have this beautiful dance of aligning our schedules, and she ended up getting stuck in traffic. So I wanted to jump on and at least still share with you guys, and I'm early because that's flow. I have some other things tonight, so I was like, cool, I'll just jump on, and mostly because I was out here enjoying this. Again, I'm gonna do this real quick while we let people jump on. See if you can see it. Oh, maybe something with the camera. There, you can see it a little bit more. Check that out. Isn't that beautiful, right? So as you guys are jumping on and enjoying the little bit of the San Diego sunset with me, that's actually that little house you see sticking up is an owl house. So we actually have an owl that jumps in and out of the place and always visits us, which is awesome, right? So please, you guys, tell me where you're at in the world. Tell me what you're up to, if you can hear me okay. We're gonna say bye to the sunset because I want to jump in and be really focused on diving in with you guys, but I'll give you one more beautiful look there, and maybe you'll see the owl. You never know if he'll pop out or pop in. Thank you, Chris. I'm so glad you're enjoying it. So Chris, obviously glad that you're here. So guys, let me know if you can hear me okay. And also, please let me know if I'm going to close this, because even though it's December in California, it's like nice and sunny every day, it's getting chilly. It's like I got to wear a jacket. That means it's a little bit chilly, right? So I'm going to scooch in here and try to set this up and sit so I can chat with you guys. Rod, awesome, Rod. Flora, where are you guys coming from? Please let me know where you are in the world. Give me a little shout out to where you're at as I get this set up right here. Orange County, Chris, I didn't know that. Awesome. Oh, I'm moving stuff. Hang on, guys. My little Gavin the Great actually put a light up for me because he does his little YouTube channel, and I was like, it's dark in my room. So Gavin's like, oh, I'll just throw up some lights. He's the best. So, April, awesome. April, where are you at? Elizabeth, awesome. Elizabeth, I'm so glad that you're here. So I'm actually, I thought this was a perfect opportunity to share on some things that have been really coming through me strongly. And, you know, Regan and I'm sure will hopefully get a chance. I think Friday we're going to try to jump on together, so there'll be more opportunity there as well with Regan. So I'm just going to give it a second. Tula, hi Tula babes. Tony, awesome, so glad you're here. Ralph, you're from Missouri, awesome. Missouri tribe, Missouri tribe. I love seeing everyone all around the world and how awesome it is that we have this ability with technology today to just be able to connect. I get messages every day, and somebody messaged me today and they're like, I just discovered your videos and I've been diving in deep and listening to as many as I can and learning so much. And I'm like, it's such a gift, right? That we have so much knowledge that can be shared. Charlene, I'm so glad you're here. Awesome. Brisbane, Australia. Beautiful. Amazing. Oh, my necklace, Flora. I'm happy to tell you that. What a great eye you have for this. So this is actually my DNA activation key. This is a specific key to my specific, unique, exact identity and essence and energetics. One of the retreats that I do is down in Europe, and where we go, and we get to go to Damanhur. And in Damanhur, Italy, it's actually known as the new wonder of the world, but it's one of the 8 wonders of the world. It's a sacred portal. There's 4 energy grid lines, so this is the only place you can get it, is down there in Damanhur. So this is actually specific to my frequency. So what it does is it protects me when I astral travel, as one of the many things. It also maximizes and magnifies my DNA activation. So when I'm doing something to activate and open my pineal gland or activate my DNA or receive codes, it actually assists my body in assimilating, that's a big word right now, and imprinting it more easily. So I'm happy to share more with you on that. And if you go to my badassbreakthroughadventures.com, I have some stuff on that, so it's really cool stuff down there. So thank you for the hearts, guys. Awesome. I love that everyone's joining in. Epic. Thank you, love. I appreciate that. So let's dive in, shall we? I wonder what you guys are wondering is, what is the thing that we are all really seeking? What are we all really seeking? Would you guys please type in the comments, what are you really seeking? What do you think it is that we are all really seeking, and yet our programming and the way that we're taught really sets us up to not even know how we're blocking it? I'd love to hear what you guys think is the thing that you would say is the number one thing, or the thing that you're really seeking. Love and peace. Charlene, that is a great answer, of course. Anyone else? Admiration. Yes, Chris, we all would love admiration, right? What else? What would those things contain? Flow. All about flow. Flora, I love that. Knowing thyself and truth. Elizabeth, good one right there. What else? Fulfillment. Awesome, Sarah, good one. Actually, that just reminded me. Hang on, I'm just going to plug this in to make sure we can continue to stay live versus having any issues there. Cool. Purpose. Valerie, abundance. Awesome. You guys have some good answers. And they're all probably encompassing. Those are more, let's say, subtle energies. Those are more, maybe you would say, surface symptoms to what I'm really, diving into. Self-awareness, Ralph, that's a great answer. Flow of life, awesome. All of these things actually come from this, right? So what I believe that we're all really seeking is we're seeking unconditional love. Because at the core of everything that we do, we're seeking to be loved, to be validated, right? Like we all know that we want love. So unconditional love though. And this is what's interesting is that I call, when I dive into this, there's really two types of love. First off, let me just back it up 1 second. By knowing that the only energy that actually has ever existed and does exist is love. That's all we have available. Everything else is man-made, so fear-based energy. So if you look at I always say there's two types of energies that are always operating. There's fear-based energy or faith-based energy, which is love energy. Fear-based energy is man-made. Fear-based energy is lack and scarcity and worry and rejection, and it's all created out of lack. That is out of nothingness. And love-based energy is the only thing that exists because everything was created based out of love. Meaning even your shit, if you want to dive into that, even all the hardships of anything that you could ever say, no, this isn't love, actually it is. Because you chose it, contracted it, created it, attracted all of that for yourself out of love to ascend to a higher understanding, to allow you to have greater. Yes, please stop and give me some hearts for that. Locking down the truth right away, right? So love-based energy is the only energy that exists. Anna, I'm so glad to see that you're here. So many beautiful peeps still jumping on. Thanks, you guys. Please pop in. What I would love to hear from you guys jumping on right now is, what do you think you're really seeking? And obviously Tula is just letting us know, of course, it's unconditional love, right? So thank you for all those hearts. You guys are amazing. And it's true, when we understand that, there's no loss of power. There's only more power in knowing everything that exists comes from love. Now, where do we start to jack ourselves up and block ourselves from what we're saying, which is unconditional love? And I know that's you. Tula, you're giving me hearts. You're like the heart girl. I love it. I ask for hearts and you're like boom, 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 boom. You guys are the best. Thank you for that. I so appreciate the hearts. So how we as a society now, manipulate this, or I'll say, is that we split love, which is the only thing that ever exists. Everything is just pure love. We split it and we manipulate it into two types of love. And that is what I would say would be conditional or unconditional, right? So if you think about this, when unconditional love is flowing through your heart, you recognize the divinity, the perfection. You recognize, regardless of people's choices or their circumstances of life or how they see the world or what they're choosing to experience, what they're choosing to do, regardless of their choice of life, you see them without projections or attachments or stories or some sort of distortion, right? You actually see them pure, clean, and you see them out of their divinity. Okay, that is unconditional. There is no conditions, there's no attachments, there's no expectations. You simply see what is and you feel love for it. It's just like observing anything. Just like, guess what? We just observed the sunset, right? Already in alignment. I'm just seeing what you're saying, Chris, with the universe. We're in alignment with the love vibes and the fear vibes. Time to start choosing the vibes. Perfect, exactly. We can choose to tune into the fear channel, or we can choose to tune into the high vibe channel. So just like the sunset out there,
we're just observing it. And there's actually, I attune this to, there's a lot of people don't recognize their power and their ability. This is kind of a side note, but their power and ability to send intentional energy. So we could just observe. It's like a lot of people aim for gratitude, but I actually believe there's a step above gratitude, which is appreciation. Will be something I'll bring this back to, is that we could just observe that beautiful sunset that we started with, right? And just be like, I'm so grateful for the sunset. And we're just observing it and noticing it. Or we can add appreciation energy to it, meaning like when I appreciate something, I'm actually sending an energy to it. I'm appreciating the sun and the sunset and all that it does and the energy that it brings. Even if you sun gaze and you know the genius that's in sun gazing and what that actually gives your body, and you appreciate that, you're sending an energy to it. When you're in gratitude, you're simply observing. You're observing and grateful for something, but there's actually no interaction to it. So even as we observe the sunset, someone could observe the sunset and be like, oh, it wasn't pink enough tonight. Maybe they have an attachment or an expectation that a sunset should look a certain way. And then all of a sudden, the sunset isn't enough because it's got a condition placed upon it based on this person's parameters and what their thoughts and conditions are, which actually are on themselves, right? That's why everything is a mirror. Everything you see is a mirror of what's within yourself. So when they see that and they have a condition, all of a sudden, the sunset, there's not love for the sunset, it's a conditional love. And so seeing things through condition, right? Condition is, it allows you to see only what you want to see, right? So if someone saw as those eyes looking at the sunset and saying it's not pink enough, they don't see the orange and the purple and all the other beauty or what's available because they're just looking for one thing based on their condition. So it's like, it's what we've been taught based on our own, again, our own conditions, our own domestication, right? It's how we've been domesticated to see the world to be is what we put on ourselves. This is what I want to get into, and other people, which then creates conditional love versus unconditional love. Awesome. Chris, I love that you love my truth. This is what I do. I lock it down. I lock down the truth, right? So give me more hearts for that. Awesome. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that support. So forms of domestication, this is what I've been really feeling inspired to talk about, is opening the eyes of awareness for us of the forms of domestication, how we are completely blocking our ability to receive love because we've been domesticated. Would you guys say that you've been domesticated? Okay, and some of you might be like, that sounds a little bit like you're a dog, right? It's like you take the wild dog or animal and you tune in and you domesticate it. And it's actually true when we think about it. That just, obviously, I just channel, things just come through, yet it's true, is that we come here pure and clean in our divinity, and we get domesticated. We get trained to operate and show up in the world as whoever trained us wants us to be, or what their perceptions are of it, right? So let's think about this. Forms of domestication are, you can notice them by they all evolve to, if I do this, right? Have you heard yourself say those words in your head, even to yourself, or saying it to another person? So if you do this, I will give you my love, right? I will give you my acceptance. I will give you my approval. Have you noticed that even when you might not say those exact words, you're saying that? If you do this, then I'm happy. Now, look at how you say that to yourself. If I do this, then I'm happy. So what's the opposite? If you don't do this, I'll withhold my love. Now just stop and tune into this for a minute, okay? Because this is some really, really powerful stuff, especially if you dive deep into, I teach a lot of this stuff in my Epic Relationships coaching, and diving deep into conscious relationships. And this is why, if you guys have heard me and followed me for a while, thank you, Kimberly, so true, I love you, girl. If you guys have heard me talk about the only space, that the only job of a relationship is to hold the container or the space to be love, appreciation, and support. That's it. And again, see, notice if we're clear and clean and we just operate out of our divinity, which is love, and our mirrors are clean, which I'll kind of dive into. If our mirrors are clean, then everything we see in front of us is perfection. Meaning every person is in their own perfection of whatever they're experiencing. There is no judgment, attachment, condition to place upon them. And hence, we're allowing that space to be love, support, and acceptance. So if you do this, I'll love, accept, and approve you. Look for that. Or if you don't do this, I won't. How that applies to yourself, because I'm going to share with you guys how you've gone from being domesticated to self-domesticated, because you've been so well trained by those from the time you were little on how to be domesticated into society to gain what? Love, acceptance, and approval, that now you've self-domesticated yourself. That sounded awesome, right? You have self-domesticated. So looking at this, right, I want you to notice that every form of attachment actually begins with, if this happens, then I'll be happy, right? So if this happens, I'll be happy. That's attachment. That's where all of this begins. So then, like, what happens? I'll feel good. I'll get love. If this happens, then I'll get love. Then I'll be happy. If this doesn't happen, I'll suffer. Why? Why do we create this suffering? Elizabeth, I love that you're acknowledging this and seeing this. It's like, holy shit, it's true. This is the thought pattern in my head of self-domestication based on my parameters I created from being domesticated is, if I get this, then I love myself. If I look this way, then I approve of myself. And I want to open your eyes, you guys, to how you actually not only see these signs and allow yourself to start operating out of your truth, and also, you know, break down and deprogram and unlearn and untrain, which is what my genius is to see the truth of who you are and in the self-domestication, yet also how to learn to now move forward out of unconditional love for yourself. That means making goals out of unconditional love and all these things. Julie girl, I love you. I do this when it comes to people responding or not on Facebook or email. Awesome, right? It's like no attachment. I'm here. This is what I'm here to share. And if you're, you know, meant to participate with me, awesome. And there's no attachment. That's beautiful. I'm so glad that you're practicing that in that way, sweetie. So I want you to notice the main word that you heard and all of those attachments and how domestication starts. Remember, if you do this, then I'll prove love and accepted you. If you don't do this, I won't. Or for yourself, remember, you're bringing it to yourself. If I do this, if I have this, if I accomplish this, if I look this way, if, then I, then I'm happy with myself, then I love and approve myself, then I'm enough, then I'm worthy, then I'm loved, then I'll show up and I'll appear, etc. Simon, my man, is jumping on. I love you, Simon. I just got to hang with him and his peeps at his mastermind this last weekend and chat with them about all sorts of awesomeness. So Simon, we're diving into unconditional love being the one thing that we're seeking, and how we block it through domestication and how to find ourselves. So I'll review for some of you peeps that are just jumping on. Noticing the word if. If I do this, I will then be loved, accepted, approved of to yourself. If you do this, then I'll love, accept, approve. So when we recognize that every form of attachment begins with the word if. All attachment begins with the word if, right? So if this happens, I'll be happy, then I'll feel love, etc. So notice, if has no place, my friends, no place in unconditional love, does it? That would be conditional love. Thank you for those heart bombs, obviously, right? That was some truth locked down. So you know, if you catch yourself in saying if, whether it be in your own head and you've self-domesticated, or an attachment or perception on any other person, oh, I'll open my heart to them if they show up this way. Oh my goodness, I'm operating out of conditional love. What's that going to get you? Conditional love. It's going to get you the same shit, because you're a perfect mirror, and obviously you're pulling and attracting spiritual law. You're attracting those things to you. The people in your life, there's a spiritual law that will pull out of them those exact things that you haven't healed and loved, so that they're in front of you reflecting that, and you only see it until you heal it and love it. So it's beautiful, right? Let's see. You and your boys have been such role models. Thanks to you, Sarah. That's so sweet of you. And I'd love to share even some things around this of dropping control and where we're going with stuff. Awesome. I'm so happy to hear that you're doing that with your little ones as well. So I want you guys to understand that humans are the only animals on the planet that self-domesticate. And I'll share with you how we go from being domesticated to self-domesticating, right? So self-domestication is an act of, I'll say, accepting ourselves based on the condition of others, or based on the condition of, you know, the ideals of society or the planet, without questioning it. That's self-domestication. All of a sudden you go from accepting. And when does this really happen, guys? I mean, I actually teach how your subconscious, when you're pre 7 years old, the only thing operating is your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind only, it has no logistics. I'll put it that way. So the subconscious mind only hears, sees, and feels, and makes a decision based on that, okay? So your 5-year-old is the one that's running your life. So these years are the times when you're becoming domesticated is what you're operating out of now. That is why you are unconsciously or subconsciously operating. We're not learning to live moment by moment in creation as it happens and consciously responding to life moment by moment and creating life moment by moment, because we've been trained and domesticated to operate subconsciously based on, if this, I'll choose this because of that, based on the past or what you're projecting into the future, right? Katarina, my girl. Thank you for joining, sweetness. You guys are in for a treat on Thursday. Katarina and I are going to go live together because I'm driving up to see my beautiful goddess sister, and we're having a little medicine day. Me and Katarina having a medicine fun girl day. So I'm sure we'll be able to jump on and share some stuff with you guys. So I know Katarina is an epic example of living in such divine light without attachments or expectations or parameters or conditions put on other people. So let's look at how we really do this, right? What's an example of domestication so you guys have a better understanding of what I'm talking about? And that would be, let's say, have you guys ever, I remember being a little kid and sitting at the table and having, maybe say the first time you're sitting at the table, not the first time, but you're eating. And whether it be a grandparent or whether it be a parent, we know, and if you're a parent, you get this. You get that we play this line between where do I support my child? Again, this is the beautiful journey of ascension with having children and learning to master your consciousness by dropping all of your attachment stories and conditioning and being able to simply honor their choices and their journey, and it being none of your business to guide or direct them based on yours, but to honor theirs, which is a beautiful journey I'm going on now with even letting my kids be able to move and different things. So imagine sitting there and maybe your grandparent or parent, actually I want to see what Ronnie's saying because Ronnie's my brother. Hey brother, rising from the ashes of human domestication. Yes, awesome my friend. I'm so glad. Of course you pulled this into your radar because you were that powerful. Love you my friend. So let's now say that you're sitting at the table and you decide you're full. You ate just a couple bites. We've all, as parents, had kids that have like nibbled at their food or eaten a couple bites. Or let's say this one, I know you guys have been triggered by this one if you're a parent. And especially if you grew up with a poor background. I see how like all my old triggers will show up when I used to take my kids to a restaurant and we'd buy a whole meal for them, right? And they'd eat like 2 bites. And then they just didn't want any more, or it didn't taste good or something. And the poor little girl in me that was raised like in poverty was literally like, you can't waste your food. We just paid for that. And I remember like every blue moon when we actually got to go to a restaurant, only a few times I remember as a child, it was to like a buffet. And it was literally like, you better get your money's worth. And so there was this story, you guys resonate with that? There was a story, I remember as a child, even if you say for instance, you eat a couple bites and you're full, or you say you're done, like you're done, like you're full. And what happens, the parent says, or grandparent might say, you gotta eat your food to be healthy and strong and be like Superman. And the parent is requesting something of you. Now, the child could be asserting their own, it's a time where they're also learning, having their own independence, their own voice, and even asserting a yes or no that feels good to them. And they might say, no, I'm done. I feel good. I'm full, or I'm done. And then what happens? This is the first way domestication starts to happen. What do you think happens? Hey, Gavin the Great. Gavin the Great's checking on me. You want to come show everyone your cool little thing? We're just talking about domestication and kids and all this good stuff. Come here. I told everyone you set up a light for me. It was so sweet. Check out Gavin's, this is Gavin's air, what do you call him?
I don't know his name.
It's like from Star Trek. When we were at Disneyland.
Star Trek, Star Wars.
Oh, Star Wars. Star Wars. This is from Star Wars. And we were at Disneyland the other day, and what did you want to create? This awesome costume, and he's been in it a lot. Since, babes? Yeah, so he's got a project, which we'll talk about, of he's actually cleaning out his stuff, because he's going to be moving to Utah in a couple weeks, which is part of this whole letting go of control completely, right? Yeah?
I realized.
Did you just come in to give me kisses? Yeah, you
No,
did.
I
set
just
up
wanted
the-
to see the light.
Oh, you did awesome. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I'm gonna remember to get back to my story exactly where I was at. A what? My water? Sure. Make sure you bring me back a water because I want a water too. Thanks, lover. You can take a drink and then hand it back to me. Okay, that's perfect. Okay, so, yep, Gavin the Great. See, Ronnie knows you. He says Gavin the Great. Gavin the Great's locking it down. So, okay, I'm getting back to this. The first way, you guys are on pins and needles, right? Like, you so enjoy this when I'm, like, about to tell you, like, the nugget, and then we go back. And you're like, wait, what, Mars? What? Thank you, Kimberly. I appreciate that. You're like, what is the first way domestication happens? Okay, so the first way that domestication happens is that it happens through giving, if you think of it this way, hanging a carrot in front of your face. It happens by bribery to give a reward, right? Thank you, love. So if we, the parent says, love you, baby. The parent says, bye. The parent says, well, you know, if you, ... Remember that the domestication starts with the word if. If you eat all your food, then, and they hang a little carrot in front of their face, right? Again, Allie, perfect. Expectation. It's like they have an expectation and they want it to look a certain way, and so they're domesticating their child to operate in that way based on their ideals. So they're like, if you do this, then, now how many of us as parents, I know that I did that before I understood what I was really doing. Yes, Sarah, oh my God, yes, this is what we do, especially as parents. We're like, if you do this, then ... We are domesticating our own children to show up in a parameter based on what we were taught or thought to be true, and we have never questioned, right? Who says that kids should eat all the food on their plate, right? Now, this is where it starts. Now, you look at our obese society and where we have no limits and parameters, and I'm going to tell you how this plays all the way across, right? So it starts with the child getting a little carrot hung in his face. If you do this, then you'll get this and a reward. Now, let's say the child's like, no, I'm good. Like, I'm full. I'm good. And the child asserts themselves, and they're practicing like it feels good to say, no, I'm good. What comes next? Well, grandparents or parent might say, now they're feeling a little challenged that they still have a parameter of how it should look, right? So then we go from hanging the carrot to, you know what? Children are starving in Africa. And, you know, it's a sin to not finish your food. It's a waste of food, and you don't want to be a sinner or someone who's selfish and not finishing your food when there's children in Africa that are starving. All of a sudden, we've made it about a blame, guilt, shaming story about children somewhere else that we can't even see and aren't even connected to. Obviously, we are connected. We're all in interdependent energy. Yet, that's the point, right? Is that it's like all of a sudden we're told a story of how if we don't do this, now we're bad and wrong. If reward doesn't work, then the second way that domestication starts to come up is through shaming and blaming and guilt. Now just sit with this for a second and tune into this, right? Because guys, I'm a stream of channel that comes through, and I'm actually like sit and feel this for a second and just observe for yourself how this has shown up for you or with your kids, with anyone in your life. Awesome. Sarah, you're saying, come on, it's a grandma, give her a hug. Yeah, right? Even if the kid says no, parents are like, oh, give them a hug, do this. We're forcing something on them, which again is conditional love. So you look at how this can show up in so many ways and so many aspects, right? So what happens is when the parent or the grandparent or whoever it is, when the child is asserting their choice, and then we start to cross lines as parents or role models, and we don't honor the choice of another being, right? And so we go beyond that, and we go to, you know, if you don't do this, then you're gonna get a punishment, right? So it becomes a punishment or guilt or shaming. You don't want to be that person. And then all of a sudden to the child, whatever it was. So Flora, you're saying your mom used to shame and blame the kids for everything, right? And I would have you tune into this because that's your programming too. Because remember, your 5-year-old is running your life. You picked up the programs of your mom and your dad. That's what's running and operating. When you start to see these, you're like, whoa, there's so many layers to subconscious programming that there's things that in the last couple of years as I dove deep into it, I found that, had no idea I was still running because I was consciously validating them instead of seeing that that's actually was a symbolization or really a reflection of the old program running. So if you know that you operated or your parents operated or treated you with a lot of shaming and blaming and guilt, wow, start to really take this in and go, oh, now seeing it for what it is. This is why if you go through my coachings or in my online programs or have heard me talk about stories with even myself and my kids, even to the stories of the first time Skylar was about to go to kindergarten and he came in and he wanted alpha hair. And I was about to be like, no, you can't, because my story was he'll be teased, he won't, he'll end up being not liking school. And all of a sudden I stopped myself because again, I saw, interesting. Why am I making this about me when it's not? It's actually, what the story is, my kid would be teased and he won't enjoy school, etc. And guess what? If that happened to him, that would probably be one of his greatest growth processes. Right? That he chose and attracted and be one of his stories of empowerment to find himself, that he was part of his own calling and attraction. Now, if I try to stop that and I say, no, you have to do your hair this way to go to school. And look, if you do your hair this way, then you'll be liked. You see again, the if that leads to domestication. Then what am I actually telling my child? I'm telling my child, you're not enough as you are. You're only enough if you look a certain way, if you act this way in a restaurant, if you show up this way, if you act this way around your relatives, etc., etc., etc. Let me see what else we got going on as comments here. Awesome. Yeah, it's true. It's like they're meant to become who they are. And this is the thing. This is the beauty of understanding this and seeing it through the eyes of truth versus what we've been taught to see. And so when you see this and you realize this is domestication, okay? So if this is domestication, then we start to punish the child. Again, I'll go back to that story. The child now is like, well, I don't want, to be seen as someone who's selfish, or I don't want to be a sinner, or I don't want to waste the food if that means I'm bad. It's like, well, if you're doing this, then ... right? So then the child goes, okay, and they give in to doing what the domestication asked them to do. And now at the end, what happens? Now the parents are happy, or the grandparents are like, oh, that's my good boy. That's my good girl. Oh, look at you eating all your food like Superman. Now we've created a program for ourselves of not listening to ourselves. We've created a new way of being and a new neural pathway that says, I don't trust myself. It doesn't matter what I say or feel. Again, we've learned to suppress our voice from, like, when I asserted myself, I got told I couldn't. You see how all these layers pop on to why we're walking around, and we're so disconnected from our divinity and how we're designed to be operating, right? So Julie, I love this. I just friggin' did that dinner thing to my son tonight. Wow. Beautiful that you called this in to now see this, right? And I get it. Believe me, sweetness. I have done it so many times with my kids until I understood and I saw this for what it was. It was me creating parameters for them of conditional love versus honoring. And me being a fitness nutrition expert, I can tell you all the ways, so many ways that this has played out. We could go on with the kid stuff forever, my growth partners. All the ways that played out, even being a nutrition fitness expert, how it was like I wanted to teach them how to support their bodies and how to eat healthy. And then of course in our house we had these things. They'd go with their dad and they'd eat shit food. And I was like, or we'd be out somewhere and people would offer them stuff and I'm like, hey, I honor you. You get to make a choice for your own body. And I thought that I was enlightened and conscious to be doing that. But I didn't realize how I still, in my home or when we'd go out, even to say to them, if we went to a restaurant, I was like, cool, can you guys, you order something healthy, and then the deal is, cool, you can choose something else too, right? How I was actually still putting my standards of how I took care of myself and why that was important for me onto them. And when I saw this over the last year or so, and I noticed how, I remember we went to a family, I flew out to Utah, and we went to a family party, and Skylar's, one of his cousins, had said like, yeah, Skylar said that, all you have is healthy food at your house. And I'm thinking, well, why would he even talk about that? Like, why would that be a thing? And I realized to him, it was like, yeah, at mom's house we eat healthy because that's what's there. And at dad's house this, even though I gave my kids choice of, you know, we had date nights all the time. They choose their things, and we found ways where it was like, cool, yeah, I support you. You get to honor your own body and choose your own things. I still, because of the years I built up on, I want to teach you how to take care of yourself so you know how to be healthy. And as a mom, of course, I'm like, I don't want my kids to get sick, and I don't want them to have sickness and disease and all these things, and I want them to understand and give them that base support of how to be healthy. I realize now I was just trying to domesticate them to what I thought was the best way for them to eat and live. And once I dropped that story, right, and now when, you know, Skylar, because Skylar just barely moved to Utah 6 months ago. And again, that was his like feeling called to face some of his stories. And I could only honor that. Of course, as a mom, I could be like, oh, I want to protect him from a certain environment and maybe a victim consciousness and all these things. I was like, you know what? Like, I have no desire to control anything. And I want to share that with you guys, and that where control is controlling you. You can see whenever you're trying to control something, if I control this, that is a form of domestication. That is not honoring someone else as being whoever they want to be, right? And I know it can be it can be confusing, and it can be interesting to see these lights of how we operate in our species and how we've done it as parents. And of course, this has just been done for so long, right? This is what we know. It's like, of course, that's how you get your kids to eat, is you know, bribe them with reward, and then you start to get angry, and then you know, threaten them, and then they do what you want, and you're like, oh, they ate. I just wanted them to eat to be healthy. But what's really going on is that you're giving them all these subconscious layers, and you're domesticating. Now, whether you have kids or not, you can see how this has maybe happened to you, and is also something you do to yourself, and you're doing in other aspects with other people in your life, how you're operating out of conditions, right? So now let's talk about how we go from being domesticated to becoming self-domesticated. How then, if we're under our parents or grandparents, or, you know, the rule, I'll say, or the programs of the adults around us that we go through that process with, where we start to learn their belief systems and the programs and the patterns and our identity, if we're under that, and then we grow up and we're not, why would we not choose something different? And this is where self-domestication is happening, and you're doing it to yourself, creating these conditions and these parameters, and you don't even realize that it's still going on. So let's go back to that example. Let's say if, you know, that happened to you as a child with the eating situation. You can see how this applies across the board. So many of you brought up other little examples of all the other ways this shows up, from the way you dress to the way you act to anything, right? And now, let's say that you're grown up and you're eating out at a restaurant or a party, or you grab yourself some food, whatever it is, and you're eating, and you hit that point when your body says, I'm done, I'm full. Okay, and whether subconsciously or consciously, whether you don't even know it, right? Whether it could be happening subconsciously or consciously, is that a voice inside you says, it's selfish to not eat all my food, or whatever the words were that you got, and whatever the domestication was about. That it's like, I'm a bad boy or bad girl. It's like, I'm a sinner. It's like, I shouldn't waste food. And click, unconsciously, you react unconsciously, not consciously respond, because that connection that you move forward in, oh, I gotta finish all my food. Do you guys do this? I mean, I know, like, I did this at one point in my life when I was completely unaware of it, was how it's like, my body was full, and for some reason, I mean, I grew up really poor. And so it was like, it's like, I noticed this as I moved through patterns and behaviors, even like understanding one of the things that I dive deep in one of my coachings is what's your relationship to food, and looking at your associations and your sabotage and different things, and seeing this is how I would want to finish all the food, because it was like, because we were just so poor, it was like, it just, there was, we had to finish all of our food, because you didn't know, you really didn't know if you were going to get enough. And so you can see how then all of a sudden you're now self-domesticated. Now what's actually happening underneath the surface is you're reliving a story. Your body is going through emotional connections to this past story, this time when you were like, your voice was suppressed. I can't assert myself. I can't be heard and expressed. I can't question things or decide what's possible or true for me. And now I'm emotionally connected to either I'm bad if I don't do it, or I'm good and grandma still loves me, or mom still loves me, or whatever, even though they're not there. Isn't that interesting? They're not even there. The story's not even happening anymore. And yet we have self-domesticated ourselves to be able to be living in the same programs and the same stories. So I want you to just tune in for a minute and notice how this can, or where this can be showing up. Let's see. Sarah, I love these. You have heavy genes, Sarah. You'll have to always look at what you eat is what I've been told. Awesome. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you're seeing this, right? And yes, every time then you're reliving the story, you're reaffirming, you're actually telling yourselves, guys, I have a couple meditations that are, cellular structure meditations, and you're literally telling yourselves how to create and respond. So with every time you're reaffirming these things, like you're noticing, Sarah, you're creating your cells to respond that way, whether it be, to hold on to food, to slow down your metabolism. You're telling your body how to respond because you're the programmer, right? So I wanted to share with you guys, this is interesting and this is why, and Julie, I know that you've experienced a lot of this because your whole business was around assisting people with binge eating before. So binge eater for 45 years because of what I was told about food and weight. You got it, girl. Believe me, I would still be doing it if I was anorexic and bulimic and struggled with my body from the time I was 4 years old up until, for a long time, until I became more and more aware and enlightened. That's why that's part of what I teach in liberating people is all these connections to even living in a body of health is because I had the same beautiful journey that I chose. So sweetness, obviously from what your the parents that you chose and that programming led you to this to be your mess that becomes your message, as I posted about today. Your mess becomes your message, right? This is why our core wounds become our greatest core strengths. I went through the ringer with all these experiences to now find the way to be liberated and to share this with you beautiful beings as well so that we all can be liberated together. And this is how we start creating that shift and that change with our own children, with each other, with ourselves, that creates the shift for the planet and humanity, that we get to return to allness, which is seeing all things out of love, all things out of unconditional love versus out of condition. So when I was, Gavin the Great and I, as you guys saw, he dropped in here just recently, when we were at Disneyland the other day, and this is why I've just been seeing things. I'm like, oh, I really get to teach around this and just share some more insights with everyone. We're at Disneyland and we're walking in and a mom's pushing her kid in the stroller and she's like, don't you even say anything. Don't you even say that you're hungry. You had breakfast and you had this and you are fine. And I was just like, oh, again, my heart always goes, aw, like for everything. Even the other day when I was teaching in this mastermind and someone was sharing with me, the program they saw picked up from their parents, my words that came out was like, aw, like I see everyone as a 5 and a 6-year-old. Little boy, little girl that literally got taught these things, and that's what they're operating out of. So I was thinking, aw, like poor mom, that's what, that's obviously what she was operating. And I was thinking, aw, for this cute little girl in the stroller where the mom's already telling her, don't you have a voice? Don't you have an opinion? You shouldn't be hungry. Don't even say anything. This is what I gave you. And I'm just like, wow. When I'm in public, oh my God, I see domestication and I'm just like, wow, I don't even see it in my world because I live in a different understanding and alignment, and the people that are in my space and environment are the same. So it's a really smack in the face to just see it all around me. And then so Gavin and I are with his school kids and we're standing in line for a ride, and I see the little family in front of me, they go to do a picture, and the little girl like does this really dramatic pose. And I just said, oh my gosh, she's so cute and expressive. And I offered to take a picture for them so they weren't selfieing it. And the mom says, she's got such great personality. Again, now notice when your mirror is clean for yourself, what you see. Okay, what you see is purity. You see love. You see, honoring. You see out of no matter what someone is choosing, what their experience is, when your mirror is clean, there's no judgment on it. If anything, there's again, like seeing the lady that was, putting her or saying that to her child, my feeling was compassion and love for her, and that's the journey she's choosing, being like, oh, I can only imagine what she's received as her programming and what the child is receiving as well. So to say, this beautiful little girl has such personality, and that's the lens that I chose to see it out of. And the mom says, oh, she's got too much personality. And again, even knowing she's saying this in front of her child and telling her child what she's too much. How many of you were told you were too much? That you're too much? again, calm down. I mean, I've said, if you haven't heard me talk about this, telling your child to calm down is one of the worst things we can do. Because what we're saying is, don't be your bright light. How many of you are struggling with being your fullest, brightest light of expression because you were told to calm down, to settle down? You're just telling them not be yourself. Settle down, calm down who you are. You're too big, you're too expressive. Calm it down. Don't be seen, don't be heard. Shh, right? And fall in line. Fall in line to that. Hello, Patty Love. I'm so glad that you're joining us. Still a lot of amazing peeps joining on. So as we're talking about this domestication and how then you become self-domesticated, right? So notice then, again, where, you know, you self-domesticate. It might be that eating thing. You might recognize where you're like, ooh, if I dress this way, I'll be loved and accepted. Now, notice where this comes up where, you know, we start to create our own parameters and standards on ourselves based out of, again, conditional love. Like I talked about in the beginning, that domestication is, you see it when the word if is there. If I do ... then I'm enough, then I'm loved, then I'm accepted. And if you do ... then I'll love and accept and approve of you. If you don't, I won't. And how, I mean, I see this the most obviously in relationships, because we create this, we've been so trained to be conditional that it's like, if you show up this way, then I'll show more love to you, then I'll be more vulnerable, then I'll love you back. We create transactions versus, again, when your mirror's clean and you're just a divine being of love, all you're giving out is love. There's nothing to create a transaction about, which is a condition. A condition. So, awesome, Allie. We need this message on mainstream TV. You got it, girl. We totally get to, right? And this is what's so beautiful about this. If you guys are resonating with this, please share it. Please share. People with kids, obviously, it's like so many of you have been like, oh my gosh, I just did that to my kid today. Even for ourselves, for us to change our humanity, we get to first take responsibility with ourselves and see how we are creating this. The best reflections in front of us, relationships are just the reflections in front of us, where I got to see, wow, where did I guard? Where did I create conditions? And actually, and this is what I want you guys to see, is wherever you find yourself creating conditions to others, those are the exact conditions you put on yourself. Because you would only have those conditions of what enough is, what love would look like, what is acceptable and approved of, if though, you know, because they're coming from you as your parameters of conditions. So I just want you guys to understand this awareness around domestication and self-domestication, and then realize, again, where going back to the beginning when I talked about there's two types of love. There's conditional and unconditional. And Brittany, you're asking me, can you please speak more to relationships? There's so much sweetness. I could go on relationships. I actually have a coaching called Epic Relationships Breakthrough that dives deep into conscious relationships. So message me and I can give you a little bit of assistance or support or where to go to for that. Because again, I could go off all day. And this is relationships actually right now. It's like, look at the relationship with yourself and anyone else and how it is all out of this domestication and self-domestication. And thank you, Daniel. I just saw that comment. I love you, brother. So glad that you're here. So we have a choice. Now that we see this and understand this, right? We have a choice. If we know that we're either operating out of condition or unconditional, you have a choice now to interact unconditionally with yourself and with others out of unconditional love. So you catch yourself if you're saying if in your head to yourself with someone else, and if is involved, then you know it's an attachment and it's a condition. It's not unconditional. So if our mirror, as I've talked about before, if our mirror is clean and we see ourselves as we've done the inner work, right, to see ourselves as beautiful, and notice, guys, this is where it comes down to, is if you notice for yourself that you're seeing yourself as, if I'm ... then I'm enough, your mirror's not clean. You're looking through fogginess. You're looking through foggy glasses. You're putting conditions on yourself. If my body looks this way, if I'm accomplishing this amount of success, if this happens, then I'm enough, right? So our mirrors aren't clean if that's what's still operating. You're not seeing yourself out of the truth and the divinity of who you are. And that's where there's a beautiful reflection for you to be able to see what the feedback is and where you get to heal and love and be able to grow from that, right? So if our mirror's clean, we're going to see clean. That means, again, let's go back to the beginning, is that out of unconditional, you're going to see all beings, no matter what their circumstances are, whatever they're creating in their life experience, you're going to see them out of that divinity, because that's also what you see for yourself as you. Why did every single person I saw, I was like, oh, you see the beauty in it. Again, when I see beautiful women, I'm just like, oh, damn, good looking girl. Oh, wow, she looks hot. I'm like, oh, wow, good job, girl. Like, I actually see everyone as beautiful, but the scared little girl, the scared past me that didn't feel like I was enough, would have been like, oh my gosh, I'm not enough, look at her, and I would have done the comparison game, which comparison is the thief of all joy. Again, that's me loving myself only on conditions, if I look a certain way. So the reason I want you guys to first off see this and understand this, and now choose to make a choice. How do I catch myself? Because just catching yourself in the fog when you're actually doing the lie, and I'll kind of dive into the narrator in your brain either being a lie or an ally. And when you catch it and you simply catch that you're in the fog and you can bring yourself back to awareness, that's the shifting of it. Because now the way that my brain operates now, again, the mindset is just an inkling of our operating systems, and a lot of people think it's the whole thing, but this is the thing where you can be fucking yourself over on the hamster wheel, because we're only utilizing all of this mindset that's actually been conditioned and trained, and we don't even realize what's happening. And so when we see ourselves, or when we utilize the mindset to just connect those dots for these things and be able to bring ourselves to the truth, no longer do we see things through the foggy glasses, because the truth will always set you free. So if you're seeing yourself through foggy glasses, then you're seeing yourself through the eyes of your programming, the eyes of these stories, the conditioning to all of this. And we're competing out of an illusion for something that we're all fighting for. All of a sudden, we're all competing for this illusion of love that is a lie, because it's not really love. It's just a trap to keep you in the cycle of, if you do this, then this will happen. Yes, Joshua, truth always sets you free. You've heard me say that. Lies will always limit you, and truth will always set you free. So domestication that we're talking about, it's a system of control, isn't it? Do we see that now? It's a scared little self striving to control. And this is why I said, in my life, I have no desire to control anything. There is no desire. Because control is just controlling you. Control is a system of domestication. So condition is its main tool. When you see yourself putting a condition on something, an attachment, an expectation, that is the main tool of domestication. Thank you for those hearts. That was like a truth bomb right there. So I appreciate that. So notice the moment you start trying to control something, right? And it's interesting. Over the last week, I ran into a friend last night that said this. We had friends over. We had a big family dinner because friends were in town just last minute. And I had several people over this last week tell me, they're like, wow, you just seem really peaceful. They're like, you just seem like so zenned out and just really settled and at peace. And I was like, oh, thank you. That's interesting. And I thought about it, and how, for those of you that don't know, I mean, this is new for me. My gap, first off, Skylar, we decided to let Skylar move to Utah about 6 months ago. He was feeling really called. Thank you for all those hearts, guys. He was feeling really called to, because of the conditioning that he'd hear, or the programs he'd hear from other family members, or, you know, his dad, etc., was, you know, he was feeling like he had to face some things to fully be his own voice and his own expression and find out who he really was. And here, even though the mom, me, have always wanted to, in a way, protect him from that, I knew when he asked, he was like, hey, I feel like I get to go face this and stand and be me, because his concern was that, you know, if he did stuff on his YouTube channel, that his dad and his family in Utah wouldn't approve. And that he, you know, he felt like he was holding back his voice and he wasn't being himself. And they'd always get told things like, oh, you're missing out here, or this and that. And so I've even had a friend that said, you know, her brother did the same thing. There's this natural desire to go live with their dad or have, you know, this experience. And as much as I would love to control what, it's in a way like teaching my kids empowerment all these years, you know, to in a way support them and hopefully almost keep them from experiencing victimhood or a different way, in some form, that's control. And so when he said, I feel the desire to go out here, I was like, babes, I can only honor and love and support you in that journey. And of course there came up fear for me, like, this is going to be really challenging for him. He's also going to go back into an environment where it's an extremely religious society. There's expectations, there's parameters, there's rules, there's regulations. And And I'm like, that's going to be the greatest growth process of his life. And so, of course, I can understand him being called to that, and I can only support his journey in that. Now, when I visited him in Utah, and he got to share with me how he's seeing all the things that I wanted him to understand between victim and creator. And I was teaching him creator, and they saw an example of creator. All of a sudden, living in a different experience, he's like, oh my gosh, I get it, and I see it. I couldn't have taught him that because he had to choose his own hero's journey. He has to choose his own story of losing things and giving up things, and where does he have to learn to go through struggle or sacrifice. So it's like, we have a pimped out magical manifestation mansion with a pool and a hot tub and like the coolest people in the world as our friends. We travel all over the world. We do this cool stuff. And I couldn't allow him to be happy. He could only create his own happy. So again, you see, if I'm trying to control, like I'm being controlled because I'm trying to control something instead of knowing it's his own journey. So when now Skylar's like, wow, I see all these things and he's learning all these things. And I'm like, wow, this is awesome. I could have never gotten him to see and understand that without him choosing that as his experience. And I had to let go of my attachments and stories. It's like, oh, what it meant about me as a mom, and what if our relationship shifted? All these things are like, wow, I get to see how I can be a mom in this way. How do I get to love, support, and accept my child fully, not even living with him anymore? And so it's been awesome. I'm like, Gavin the Great and I have more focused time. We'll, support him in all these ways. And so what just came up in the last 2 months, thanks for all the hearts, lovies, is Gavin and Sky they've been so close. They're desperately missing each other. Their brothers, are not, their best friends are also not there and available. And so Gavin is like, well, is there thing, and seeing his brother grow through all these things and understanding is like, is there things for me to learn there? And he's like, I want to go learn and understand those things. He's like, when would I get to go do this? Now, the past me would have been like, oh my gosh, he's too young, he's too impressionable, he's gonna, get all this, because I could see still where he was very impressionable. Every time he'd go out there for a visit, he'd come back with these stories that we'd get to break down, like what was acceptable and not acceptable, how he could act or talk or be. And I'm like, well, that's interesting, let's look at that, let's question that. Can we have those opinions? Can we honor people for that? That's okay for people who are choosing this, but can we also be this? And we would break down those things so that he would just see all the possibilities. And even quick little story, the last time when he was there in the summer, I got to talk to him. I think I was in Canada, and he was having intensely bad chest pains because Gavin's also an empath, so he feels everything really intensely. Again, I teach a big thing around being aware of what's happening that's actually unconsciously happening, and our feelings are the guide to that. And so I call him, and he's saying, Dad's going to take me to the doctor today. My chest hurts really bad. I'm like, wow, babes, we haven't been to the doctor since they were babies, just because of how I've taught them and trained them, and that we're creating how we feel. We're creating our health. And I was like, wow, sweetie. And the moment he told me his chest was in pain, I said, what are you really sad about? Because I knew chest reflected sadness. And he instantly started crying and started telling me just all these perceptions and projections he had about his interactions with his dad and his family, and how he didn't feel heard. And when we processed through all of them, and we honored all perceptions and allowed him to see how his dad had heard him and how he had supported him, and was he open to certain things, but how he'd seen it in a certain way. Once he processed it all done, at the end he was like, his chest was gone. His pain was gone. He never had to go to the doctor. So my fear, of course, now with Gavin saying, I want to learn these things, and him and Sky wanting to be together, all of a sudden I'm like, wow, I have no desire to control. So I'm like, sweetie, if you feel called to go there and be close to Sky and be able to learn, what it's like to live with your dad and other family too, I'm like, I can only honor and support that. And he's only 11, right? And believe me, I'm like, whoo, like letting go of control in a whole nother way. And going, well, I'm excited for the journey I get to go on. I only have 2 more weeks with my Gavin the Great. And I'm excited for the journey that I get to go on, seeing what comes up for me. Because I know even with Sky going out there, I was like, so all of a sudden these fears came up, like, I'm going to lose my relationship with him. And I actually saw the reflection of how once he got to see life in a different aspect, how he only honored me more and appreciated me more. And we had even a greater connection, and it's different. I don't talk to him every single day, where I used to have him in my home every day, and date night every week and all of that. And so guys, this is me sharing how I am still always growing in this and letting go of all control. So with Gavin the Great, you know, it's like we have the best relationship. It's all love and amazingness. And the fear was like, oh my gosh, like again, it's like, it's not about me. It's not like I'm a bad mom or I'm not providing or he's not happy. It's his own desires that I'm honoring, his choice that he feels called to go learn something and he feels called to be with his brother. And again, I let go of attachments of being like, he has to be a certain age. I have to have taught him a certain amount of things. You know what? It was just more like, you know what? I trust him as a divine being. Even though he's in an 11-year-old body right now, he's a divine being. He's one of my mentors because your children are some of our greatest mentors. It's not us as parents who teach our children. It's our children who teach us, right? It's like you learn way more from your kids than you ever did from your parents. They're your perfect little growth partners and reflections, right? And so me knowing that this is just his choice and what he's feeling called to, again, I was like, babes, I can only honor you. And we were actually going to stay through this year, and it just kept coming up more and more and more. And I was like, sweetie, why don't we set it up that you can go out at Christmas? So you can be with Sky and you can, this is where you're feeling called. And I mean, we have beautiful, authentic conversations where then he's like, Mom, I want to be with you and I feel called to do this. I'm like, sweetie, awesome. And I said, and guess what? And he's like, I'll be back in a year. Sky and I will both be back in a year. And I said, and if you're not, that's okay. So see, I've had to let go of attachments of they could completely change their mind. Sky's got a girlfriend now, 14 years old. He's got his first girlfriend and friends out there. And even though the plan was for him to go out for a year and to experience these things and stand and, face belief systems and express himself fully, I knew he might choose to stay because it might be a draw to him. He might love his friends out there and those things. And even with Gavin, I said, sweetie, I love you so much that if you decide to stay, that's okay too. That's totally like, I love you no matter what. So again, when we bring it back to our base is love and support and acceptance, that is unconditional love. I don't love my child. And the past me, believe me guys, the past me would not have seen this and I would not have responded that way. The past me would have tried to control him staying. The past me would have been like, well, when you're older, then you can, and wanting to prepare him more. Or, the past me would have, just done whatever I could manipulation-wise, even unconsciously, to protect him and keep him close to me because that was how I could keep him safe. And again, we have pure intentions, but when anything is an if, and it's based on a condition, I was only feeling safe as a mom, and if he was in my space. That's not love, that's not honoring, that's not trust. And so this is even a beautiful journey for me and that's why I mentioned the friends that have said that. I'm like, it's interesting, I'm going through now shifting into something that's going to be a really new expansion and growth for me for the first time my Sky's now 14. You guys know that I've been on the journey of the internal game for over 20 years. Yet it was 8 years ago when I found out I had the cheating husband and got divorced, and my kids were 1 and 4 years old. And I really dove, and my genius became understanding all of my gifts and capabilities of the inner game and seeing all the dots and all the lines in the whole process. I see the whole picture. So I see all the gaps in the micro alignment. And seeing that and going through this journey, I've taught my kids along the way because that's how I learned. Like, we learned together. We learned communication, we learned conscious, relationship, we learned all this, which is now what I teach to free others and give them that liberation. So we've gone on this journey together. And so I've had, for the first time in 14 years, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I don't have kids to take care of here physically. Yes, I get to experience what's it going to look like for me to show up as a mom in another way, meaning like love and support and accept them always and be there for them from afar. And what's going to come up for me and how do I get to all of a sudden like openness of time to create more and to, study more and so I'm actually letting go of my house because I have the magical manifestation mansion for those of you that, this might be a surprise to a lot of my peeps out there. Gorgeous magical manifestation mansion we've had here for beautiful community events and my retreats and love this place. We've activated it and gridded it and all this. And yet again, to attach myself to a thing is another form of attachment and conditioning. Even to say my identity is, oh, I have this place that everybody loves and is this thing. That's still an attachment and a condition on myself to be loved based on something. And so I'm like, why would I need this massive magical manifestation mansion if my kids aren't here? And I wouldn't be drawn to just be here because I'm always loving to travel and do my retreats and things. So I'm literally like, cool, I guess I'm going to let go of the mansion My kids are leaving, and probably between February and April, I'm out. I'm going to be just traveling the world and just seeing where I get pulled and drawn. Someone the other day said, yeah, it feels like a Marci Lock World Tour is being called. But it's like, also I'm feeling like a lot of us influencers are being called to be flexible, to be wherever we get drawn to go for the energy and the creation with the shifting of the universe. So, you know, this is, for me, also seeing where I domesticated in the past my kids, and I self-domesticated, and now it's just surrendering, completely surrendering and letting go of all control in all things, in all areas. It's like, that's why, like, now I even see an inkling of, I'm like, I have no desire to control. And this shows up, guys, and like, I have no desire to control, like, you know, I only work with the people who absolutely are like, please, 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 let me prove it to you. I want to work with you. I have no desire to control or manipulate or, I mean, it's just like, once you see it for what it is, it's just like, ugh, that's a yucky energy. I just would not want to be in my system or my space or my experience. And so when you can see it out of these eyes and these understanding, right? To understand how we can choose unconditional love. And if you're not seeing it, you get to look within at your own inner work as to what conditions you're putting on yourself that would be showing up externally, and how you also now get to love unconditionally yourself and others. And choosing this as the awareness allows you to see, am I looking through foggy glasses? Am I utilizing control as a form of domestication? And conditions as a tool of that, and dropping control completely, right? And when, let's say that you can only give to people the conditions that you put on yourself. And this is why I was saying, when you see yourself doing it to others, all of a sudden you see where you're doing it to yourself, because you created those conditions. So the thing that I want to bring around to this to support you is, notice the voice in your head. Okay, because you're going to catch the self-domestication and the domestication with others with the voice in your head saying, if, like, oh, if I do this, then da-da-da, or if they da-da-da-da, and it always be based on a parameter. But now I want you to notice the voice in your head, is it actually an ally or a lie? Okay, because we've all just had the voices in our heads, but what I want you to understand is you're not these thoughts. What programming even that you're operating out of right now, I want you to understand, isn't you. It's just what you learned. It's just what you learned. It's not actually you. So when you look at the voice in your head, and again, you know, Joshua mentioned this, and I've said this before, where lies will always limit you, and the truth will always set you free. If you're operating out a lie, all of a sudden it's like, well, if da 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 da, or you know, what the lie does is it brings up self-doubt. It blocks creation completely. What it does is it always has a condition. Okay. So you're going to notice it's a lie because it doesn't feel good. It's always going to limit you, and it's creating self-doubt and distrust and conditions and parameters. And so notice that this is the fog that keeps you from knowing who you really are, because this fog is like you're looking through these foggy glasses, right? And it keeps you from experiencing the truth of who you really are. So if you've done your inner work, again, I want to remind you that you'll see the clarity. You'll see that, you know, you can see, again, like I can see my boys out of love and light, and I can see others out of love and light, and I can just see them for their divinity. And you can honor anyone in your life and space out of divinity and out of them being understanding. Again, as I said about Gavin, he's in an 11-year-old body, but he's a divine being. His age has nothing to do with it. He's actually a divine being that contracted and chose these things and created these things, and he's being drawn to these things. So when I see him out of that light, and that we all have the right and the honor to experience our own journey and our own ascension process, and to be in that, whatever it is, again, now I can just see all things for what they are. There's no judgment or story around it. So the simple act I want you to be aware of is that when you catch yourself looking through the foggy glasses or catch yourself in the lie, just being aware of it and then pulling yourself back to center, and now realizing, is the story I'm choosing an ally or a lie? So I'll give you an example of this. Like, this is where I wanted to go with understanding the love unconditional or unconditional, is that when we have these conditions, you're going to catch this for yourself, where are we setting even goals for ourselves that are based on conditions? So say, for instance, you look at yourself and you say, oh, I don't look very good right now. So now I'm going to make a goal to eat healthy and work out so that I look good. Now, you might think that's an empowering thing, but you're setting a goal based out of a condition, right? That I'll love myself when I look good. Now what happens is subconsciously, if you put all this inner game starts to show up, right? Where it says, if I don't reach that goal, then like if I set a goal because I'm not enough, then what happens is I make an agreement with myself that I'm worthy, and I'm worthy of my own love if I reach the goal. Now what happens, and that's if the goal is obtained. What happens if you don't reach the goal? You just created more armory, I guess you could say, or weapons or whatever, use lies to hurt you, to say, see, evidence, you never got that, you've always failed, you haven't done that. And when it comes to the weight loss game, right, guys, this is norm. People, it's like, oh, look at all those times you failed, or you set a parameter on yourself. Oh, I'll love myself if I eat perfectly. And then you don't eat perfectly, and you go, ah, damn it, I didn't do it, I suck at this. And you just create more armory for the lies, more stuff for the lies. And so if you do meet the goal, then what your inner guide is doing is now you've raised the bar on yourself. You're saying, oh, see, now you got to stay up here. I only love you if you're here. Now you wonder why? You wonder why we're operating in a system that's a trap. We're operating in a trap. Because now it's like, what you're saying is, I'm never enough as I am. I'm enough if ... You love me if ... And now you can see how you do it to yourself. And then even when we're in empowerment or improvement, how we're doing it unconsciously through an energy and a frequency of love and lack and conditional love, not unconditional love. And that doesn't serve anyone, guys. It really doesn't. So I want to give you some tools in even catching this, and or just things to notice and what you can give towards it. Now, at the very beginning, I talked about appreciation versus gratitude, and then just even appreciation energy. Now, when you notice you have an attachment or a condition or an expectation, what can you switch it to? You can instantly switch it to appreciation. You can start to look at what you appreciate about the situation, what's right about the situation. And looking through the eyes of appreciation, all of a sudden, and you guys doing this in like love relationships, when you recognize, like your mind would have been like, well, I expected them to ... And all of a sudden you catch yourself in this energy or this condition or the if game, and you go, oh, wait, what can I appreciate about right now? Like I can appreciate that they did that. I can see out of the eyes of appreciation. So just adding appreciation. I appreciate that versus I expect this. Those are two completely different stories. Again, conditional versus unconditional. Unconditional only sees through the eyes of appreciation and love. And remember, at the very beginning, I said that the only energy that actually really exists is love energy. So when we've taken ourselves out of that, we're operating in fear and lack and scarcity and the lies that are keeping us from our allness. Again, now when I've done again the inner work to see the story through the ally, to see the story through the truth. So I'll give you an example. Let's say, for instance, maybe you had, what I mean by that, by you can choose now, even looking at your old stories and how maybe because of your domestication and the programs that you were taught, you have stories about your past and you see them out of lies instead of an ally that you could choose. So let's say, for instance, that you grew up and had a certain experience, like maybe you were raised where you were moving all the time. And so you created a story out of the lie is like, I moved all the time, I could never make friends, or I'd start to make friends, and then we'd move again, and so now I can't connect with people, I feel guarded, I feel like I'm afraid of abandonment. Because of the experience you had, you chose a lie. Now, if you decided to see and appreciate what you actually got from that experience, and you could choose it out of the ally, that could look like, what I learned, I had the blessing of moving a lot as a child, and I learned to be flexible. I learned to go into different environments. I got to see several different countries and see how people lived, or I got to experience a lot of different situations. I got to make lots of different kinds of friends or interact with lots of different kind of people. And what it taught me was ... Now, if you chose to be done with the lie and done with that story as a part of your stories, and you now decided, what's my new interpretation, right? Guys, this is huge. If you just simply looked at your stories and you chose a new interpretation that served you, that was an ally, and that was the only fucking thing that you were committed to seeing and speaking and talking about and feeling, right? And again, I teach that we want to feel all of our feelings, tune into what they are, but then again, we return them back to the ally and the truth. because everything else has been the lie based on your domestication and your self-domestication. So ultimately, and there's something else around that I want you to see that's so, I mean, if you've heard me talk about, I've said that, what's more sacred than your own life experience? Meaning the investment in yourself to grow through your ascension is the most sacred thing you have. Because you can see how, because I've invested in myself and given myself the time, effort, and energy to understand and discover my divinity and express my divinity, what has it given me? It's given me epic relationships. It's given me freedom of abundance and manifesting whatever I want and living the life I have. And that's come from, again, me choosing I'm worthy. Now, ultimately, that sacredness is in my everyday life example. And my girl, Katarina, that was on here before, whether she's still on or not, we were actually voxing about this today. And that a friend yesterday, as he told me, he's like, you just seem so peaceful and so chilled out. And again, I'm like, this is interesting. I'm going through something that if you really, you look at what I'm experiencing with letting go with my kids and my house and everything, you'd think another story, someone might be like, oh, trauma, drama. And it's like, no, like this is beautiful. It's life experience, and we're growing and evolving to see how much greater our relationship can be. And maybe this is the thing that we get to call in to allow us to find the other greater depths of support and love and acceptance, right? And as he said, I just seemed so peaceful. And I was like, well, I mean, always in surrender, always in growth and expansion. And he said a quote, I can't remember who he said, I don't know if it was Buddha or who he said it, but he said that the sacredness is in the ordinary everyday path. And I found that so interesting because I was like, that's exactly what I've experienced for myself. Meaning there was a time when I was like, I wanted to just, share this message of truth that I have, and was like, affect more people than Tony Robbins and just like assist the masses to a massive degree. And when we're again seeking to be something or have a purpose, we're like, I got to do my purpose. I got to do that thing. I got to, accomplish this. That's actually out of this underlying frequency of validation. I have to be that to be enough. Versus when I'm simply the purpose, because this is what I want you to hear, is that you are the purpose, and your sacred journey, even your everyday or what you might call your ordinary life, to see the sacredness of that. It's why Katarina was saying to me how, I think it was Katarina saying how that's why people at a certain age, as they get older, they're like, they don't give a fuck about all the hype anymore. It's like, what do I want? I want a pretty garden, and I want to, I want to, like, they don't, there's, again, you lose the worry about rejection or perception of other people. You're kind of like, I'm done with that. I'm done with that. And you can choose to be done with that, you guys, now, and not wait till you're lived your life to an older age and be like, I'm so tired of worrying about what people think. I'm going to stop that now. And this is because our everydayness is our ascension process. That's where the beauty comes in. And so I went from, thinking I'd, be a certain thing for the world to being like, doesn't matter. I'm here for me. My purpose is how much happiness and joy and pleasure and love I can experience. Because as I do that, what comes through me is like tonight. It's like I get to share this. Like this has been coming through to share with my family. You are my family, because we're in allness together. We're interdependently connected. And it's when I can share this with you and you understand domestication and self-domestication and how it's affected you in your life, and we start to shift these things together, we as a humanity rise to a greater experience and understanding of accepting each other and creating unconditional love, which ends poverty, it ends sacrifice, it ends struggle with sickness and disease. It ends all of it, because we're operating out as high vibe frequency, which can only create greater. And we all can have prosperity and abundance, etc. So ultimately what I want you to hear is that it comes back to you choosing to be the person that is unconditional love for yourself and for others, right? And so finding the sacredness in you and your path and your journey and your everyday moment experiences, when you choose how you're going to respond, and that you're going to respond consciously versus unconsciously, that is so sacred. That is such a beautiful, sacred thing. And so find the sacredness of honoring yourself, in loving yourself no matter what. And this was such a journey for me, going from, being anorexic and bulimic from the time I was little, and having to, like, if some of you've heard some of the stories where I went walking with my mom at 4 years old, And you know, she was doing this to burn calories, and I wanted to hold her hand, and she's like, oh no, I have to do this to burn calories. And at 4 years old, I made a decision that that the body was so important, it was more important for my mom to do that than to hold my hand. The body was so important that if I didn't look a certain way, I wasn't going to be loved. And so starting from a young age of fighting my body to now being in a place where it's like, again, I catch myself in old programming like, oh, whoa, I love myself no matter what my body's showing up as. No matter what I'm experiencing, if you can apply love, how can you expect yourself to accept and receive prosperity and love and all these things if you're not giving it to yourself? You can't. You can only give what you have, okay? And so you can only receive to the level that you love yourself. So if you don't love yourself in your smallness or in anything that you would deem based on your conditions and domestication as not enough or bad or wrong, you can't accept loving yourself in a different space either. Like I said, it's a trap because now you said, oh, I only love myself if I'm here. You get there and what do? Because you're saying I'm unworthy and I'm not enough unless I'm this. That sabotages. There's resistance energy. You just planted the seed of fear to it. So you're always going to sabotage it anyways. I kept sabotaging my body back in the day when I only was seeking it out of love and validation and approval from others. That's what led me down the inner game of understanding that I had to love myself. And then I would create living in the behaviors of health to have a rockin' body that was always operating perfectly because I loved myself enough to create that. But when I didn't love myself enough to create it, I was striving for it outside of me to get it, just like you might be striving for love or success or anything. These all apply, right? And in these unconscious commitments, which Joshua has just been going through my unconscious commitments coaching, this applies. What your unconscious commitments are is what you're striving, you're operating out of. So you're always going to create that because it says, this is what I feel like I'm worthy of. This is what you've been conditioned you believe you're worthy of. But you can stop it right now by catching yourself in these conditions and choosing unconditional. So consciously or unconsciously, guys, what I want you to hear is that your future is being formed right now. Consciously or unconsciously, your future is being formed right now. So the present right now, it will create your future, right? And the future holds within it the present. Do you get me? Okay, so the future holds within it the present awakening. It can only be built right now in the present. So ultimately, guys, you have a choice, like this whole thing has been about. Understanding now domestication, self-domestication, choosing love, being conditional or unconditional. You have a choice to start seeing it, becoming aware of it, and simply not shaming or blaming or guilting yourself if you catch it, just like some people tonight, but like, oh my gosh, I just did that today, I just did that to my kids tonight, blah, blah, blah. Yep, it's like, oh, wow, silly human brains and our programming and our domestication. Wow, thank you for that feedback. Thank you for allowing me to see where I was unconsciously operating. Now I'm back in, I'm control as the creator and the source of my own experience. Now what do I do with that feedback? How do I practice dropping those conditions for my children, for myself, for all the people in my space in my world to be able to create something different and to create a different result? So, I love you guys. I think I don't know how long I was just blah, 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 channeling all of that. But I hope that if this resonated for you guys, if you really felt like some people in this were like, this has to be shared, Allie, I believe it was you. Thank you, sweetness, for loving me. I appreciate that and receive that fully. If you guys know that this will serve someone that you know, if there's been even people that you recognize that you've domesticated and you've done it to yourself, please share, please lead them to some truth, because our whole intention, obviously, guys, is the more that we can share with our brothers and sisters the possibilities and how to operate out of our divinity, meaning our highly evolved being self. We give this gift. You can only give it to someone else when you choose to first do it yourself. So start with you. Start utilizing these tools to catch for yourself, and then be able to share with those people that you love so that you can practice together. I always say, we're just practicing. With my kids, whenever we had to disconnect, we're like, cool, what's the feedback? What triggered you? What triggered me? Oh, this is how I took it. These were my assumptions. These were my projections, blah, blah, blah. Cool. Now, what are we practicing? And now we're just practicing. We're practicing what we get to do. So thank you for all the hearts, all the love, you guys. If you have any specific questions that maybe I didn't answer or you want some support with, just message me. I love you. I love you. I'm super, super glad for all of you just joining on and giving me your effort and your energy. And being involved here in this beautiful interdependent energy. I have a couple things to go rock out now. So I love you. Sending you lots of love. Enjoy your night.